how can you do the same thing all day long? And you know what he said to me? If I didn't catch fish all day, I'd find a way to kill you. That was a quote from the second most epic gamer film ever made, Serenity. God, this movie. This movie. But we'll get into it in a bit.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Awful Takes Podcast, episode 35.
35, geez.
35.
And yeah, it's been a year since we first started.
Yeah, it's been a year.
Insane.
For those of you who don't know, we've been doing this thing for a year now, recording week to week, stuff like that. However, we didn't start officially uploading until June. But yeah, it's kind of surreal. We are... Again, when we were first going about this, like I really was like, we're probably not going to get that many views for a while. And yet we have some videos that have a lot of views, and it's just kind of shocking. And it's just kind of weird to think that people out there are listening to this. Whether they stay or not, I really don't know. But at least they come and they listen, and they, I guess, I don't know, listen to our opinion, which is really cool. Yeah. I don't know, Wallied. What was your expectation going into making this podcast? How many views and stuff did you think we would get?
I probably thought we would get like at least like a small little audience at first, you know, and then just maybe grow a little bit more quicker and everything, I guess, you know. But yeah, it's been a ride for sure. I feel like I've learned a lot from being on this podcast and everything, and I've tried to get better with just being able to get my points across and just kind of like talk about my emotional connection with the films and everything. But it's been pretty cool. It's been a really fun ride and everything. It's been a fun learning experience.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you guys for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, the format of this show is we make recommendations with movies to each other. And whether we both seen it or maybe one of us has seen it, we watch them and then we break down our thoughts.
Yeah.
If you want to jump straight ahead to like our review, we'll have timestamps in the description. Usually beforehand, we like to discuss things we hear in movie news. It's almost like a timestamp of where we exist right now in the world of movies and how that can further change throughout the years, you know?
Yeah. Because movie news changes so much, and it's like the news on some movies is like it goes from like this big announcement to like, oh, it's not even getting made anymore, or it's like, oh, it's going through some kind of interesting production things, you know?
Yeah.
It's always fascinating to kind of hear with movie news.
Definitely. In regards to that, there are news that's not even pertaining to like a movie release date or anything. Sometimes it's just like the distribution, sometimes it's theater chains. So anything that really kind of piques our interest, we'll discuss. One of the things that I'd seen recently in the news is that the Academy Awards is going to be adding a stunt category, which I think is a little... It's long overdue because
very much
stunt work has been around ever since movies have been created. Man, when you watch some of those old black and white films and to see the stunts and things they would do is just crazy, because nowadays there's so much safety and things involved, and there's so much meticulous planning, constructing these stunts, making sure everyone is safe. And going through that is such a long process. It's sometimes even longer than it takes to write some of these movies, you know? And not only to mention like the stunt training that goes into training your actors, training your stunt workers to portray certain cultures or to portray certain ideas that directors have in their head, you know? Like, it's hard. It really is a time-consuming, all-encompassing kind of thing. And I feel like stunt work has just been kind of overlooked for a while. Some of these guys do get their recognition. Some of these guys do kind of move outside of that category. However, we haven't had like a big moment of, you know, a stunt worker truly getting recognized for pioneering a new stunt or a new look or a new way to go about filming something. It's kind of crazy to think of that now it's finally happening. Here we are. I guess they have plans to start it in 2028. And just to think about even just this century in movies, the amount of stunt work that we've been seeing is amazing.
Quite a lot. Yeah.
How do you feel about stunt work in movies in general, Wallied?
It's probably one of the most essential things in film that I feel like editing and sound work gets underlooked and gets overlooked a lot of the time. You know, these are people who literally put their lives at risk to see these awesome action sequences that we usually sometimes take for granted a lot of the time. So it's nice. I mean, unfortunately it's taken so long, but it makes me happy to hear that like it's finally getting that recognition it deserves, you know, and it's exciting, you know, it's like we can finally give attention and shine light on these people that do risk their lives to give us these really awesome stunts and everything like that.
And sometimes these stunts will go wrong, you know, people take injuries, things like that. But sometimes some of these stunt workers inspire these actors to push forward. I mean, obviously one of the big ones is someone like Tom Cruise, who handles a lot of his own stunts and things like that. But he gets it from, you know, seeing stunt work in movies. You know, he sees the practicality and what can be achieved, and it inspires him. And with how big those movies are, the Mission Impossible movies, it really has become a staple of like action in general. So, and it's so funny. It all boils down to, you know, the stunt work that I think most people kind of just take for granted. You know, a lot of my favorite movies, especially action movies, sometimes it relays all down to the stunt work. You know, if the stunt work is not 100% filmable, then they'll find editing tricks to go around it or to cut it, or, you know, things like that. And some of my favorite action movies are my favorite action movies because there's actual guys on screen doing a lot of this stuff. Yeah,
and they're committing to it. You know, they're not cutting over the things. They're not doing like shaky cam or cutting every 2 seconds type of thing.
And however, I feel like as great as it is now, I don't think stunt work is going anywhere. However, we are looking more and more into doing CG and stuff like that, which I feel like a prime time to do like this type of an award was probably a long time ago, you know?
Right.
And it's just shocking to me that now it's finally seems to be happening. Now, I don't know if it's going to be in recognition of the stunt coordinator, a team. I don't know how this whole award's going to take place, but I'm very excited to see how it goes about.
Definitely. I'm very
how
interested.
They roll it out. Yeah. But again, some of my favorite movies have really awesome stunt work. I know, one of my favorite movies, in one of the earlier movies, one of the stunt coordinators was basically filled in for like an actor in the movie and had this stunt where he ended up injuring himself and he ended up breaking his leg. And later on, when they did a sequel, this was many years after they had filmed that movie. Now he was moved up all the way to stunt coordinator, and he's like, I'm going to make sure that no injuries happen while I'm in charge of this set, you know?
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's just little stories like that, you know, and it's just the commitment that these guys have is really cool.
It's a big learning experience for them and everything. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
It's awesome though.
All right. We are going to talk about for a little second the Batman Part 2 or the Batman 2, whatever it is. Apparently, it's facing some more delays. Right. It's kind of funny recently. Me and a friend kind of got into a little spat about this movie, the first movie, because I didn't really feel like it was my favorite. I've only seen it once. I've never really felt compelled to watch it again. Now, you're hearing rumors of this movie keep getting delayed, things happening, and now we have Robert Pattinson. I guess is now going to be in talks to be in Dune 3 now, you know? And I'm just like, I keep thinking like this movie is just like forever, like just getting delayed, pushed back. They are not starting filming. I don't know what's really going on. And now with James Gunn's Superman coming out, it's serving as a start to this new DC universe, in that they're going to have a different interpretation of Batman. So now I'm kind of going to be confused when both of these Batman movies, if this is going to happen, if they start coming out near each other, how is this all going to play out? Like, will the audience be able to figure out these two different worlds, these two different Batman movies? Because with this thing just keep getting pushed back, I'm like, how is this going to work? You know, I know James Gunn has very much said he's going to label these outside movies as Elseworld stories, but I just feel like this time for this Batman movie to strike is just forever just getting more and more pushed back, and you're not striking while the iron's hot. Like, people, after they saw that first movie, they want more. And now it just seems like they just can't find their footing. But another report I've heard is they still actually haven't even finished writing the script yet. So I don't really know what to think of this movie. Wallied, you're hearing these stories. What's kind of going through your head of the delays?
Yeah, it seems like it's a bit of a circus, honestly. It seems like there's not a lot of preparation and everything. It seems like they're still kind of like trying to like find the ins and outs of like developing the story. And then of course, Robert Pattinson is like a big name. So, you know, he's probably doing like a bunch of other projects. And then of course now with Dune 3 and everything, it's like, who knows how long that'll even take now and everything. So I don't know, kind of interested to see what's going to be next for the Batman 2. Granted, I wasn't the biggest fan of the first Batman movie. I thought it was good overall, but I thought it was a little too long, and you know, it just felt kind of like a Fincher film, but with like Batman basically. I'd be kind of interested to see what's gonna happen. I think it could be honestly just probably like a kind of Elseworld story. I think you could probably just use that as kind of excuse, you know. But yeah, it might be a few years until we actually get this Batman film.
Part of me is in the camp. I'm probably the only one in this camp, but in my opinion, I think it was not the smartest move to do another realistic take on Batman. I feel like after Nolan found his success with his 3 movies and obviously doing the whole realistic take on Batman
with Dark Knight, right?
Now here they are. This Batman, same thing. It's based in realism again. And I feel like because of that, they are writing themselves into a corner of like, well, what villains can we do? You know,
right?
How do we make this work in the grounds of a realistic world? Probably try to stay away from villains with like superpowers,
like Dr.
like
Freeze or Clayface. Because I remember hearing rumors about that and everything. So I'm like, I guess we're not going to use those, you know? So
I feel like with them setting the tone in that first movie, now they're having a hard time of, well, how do we do that? How do we follow that up with another realistic villain, you know?
Right.
Which I'm hoping isn't the case. For all I know, they announce or they, you know, unveil the Batman Part 2 and it has some type of super villain or whatever. But that was my problem going into it. I was just like, really? Like, here we are. We're doing another realistic take on Batman. Yeah. Like, why don't we go more towards the comic, lean into that stuff, you know? It just really kind of upset me that it was just like, what else can you do? Those Nolan movies were so well, you know?
Right.
And watching that first Batman movie, seeing them tease the Joker again, I was just like, come on. Like, I get it. Joker, obviously, he's really popular and everything. Obviously, they're going to do Joker at some point. However, I was just like, it felt a little too reminiscent of, not like a ripoff or anything, but it just felt like in the same vein as like a Christopher Nolan take, you know?
Yeah. I am hoping, though, with James Gunn's universe, since he is going to probably be doing a Batman film at some point, I do hope it, like what you're saying, they do go more in like the comic direction and kind of use characters like Dr. Freeze and Mad Hatter or like kind of the more like sillier villains, you know, kind of really take advantage of that and everything, kind of lean more into that camp side of Batman. Because I feel like it's a side of Batman we haven't really gotten that often and everything. So I'm kind of more interested to see that side of Batman for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think that's why this movie's taking as long as it's taking, is because they can't seem to nail down what they set themselves up for. You know?
Right.
Because obviously the first one was really good and I liked it and everything.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I feel like I was like, what else can you really do? Like, are you just going to do the Joker again? That seems to be what they were setting up. But I'm just like, didn't we already do that?
Right. And then especially now with that most recent Joker film, it's like, I feel like it's kind of getting like Joker fatigue. How much more Joker can we see?
It's so funny that the villain who is literally the most unpredictable villain in comic book history is something that we're already just kind of predicting. We're just like, all right, it feels tired at this point.
Yeah, which is unfortunate and everything, because I do think he is a very compelling villain, especially when he is with Batman, you know. So
we'll see. I mean, again, just hearing this news, I'm just like, I really feel like they didn't, they kind of they wrote themselves into a corner with doing this realistic tone again, and it's just kind of like disheartening, and it's just like I'm open to see what they have planned. Like, obviously I'm gonna go to watch it. It's Batman, but it feels kind of tiresome at this point, and I'm just waiting for James Gunn to do his take. Honestly, at this point, I'm just like, just
I'm like, thank God for James Gunn there. I was like,
I don't need more I don't need another 3 movies of realistic Batman,
or realistic gritty DC films in general.
Yeah, I was like, we got this already.
We don't need it.
All right. We're going to be talking about a movie today that Wallied recommended.
Unfortunately.
It's a very interesting idea that Wallied had. In an earlier episode, we talked about, actually one of our first episodes, I recommended a movie called Locke, which I thought was really good, and Wallied ended up enjoying as well.
Yeah, I really liked it.
And this movie is serving as a follow-up to that movie, but it's not a sequel. It's just a director following up his previous work. And that was, to me, when he said it, I was like, that's really interesting to see now. Director's kind of next step after something that was pretty well received, obviously by the few people who saw it.
Right.
But now here we are in this new movie. Can he follow it up? Can he kind of expand? Can he take a step into definitely a movie that has a bigger scope than Locke? Obviously, when we were talking about Locke, it's a guy in a car through the whole movie. So with this movie, it's not that way. So can he do it? Wallied, what are we talking about?
So I gave Nabahi the recommendation of Serenity by Stephen Knight. And essentially, I guess to kind of tell you what this movie is about, because like Fateful Findings, when you're watching it, you don't really know what it's about. So essentially, the first half is about a fisherman who's played by Matthew McConaughey, who essentially is like on this island or whatever it is, and basically his ex-wife decides to come, and they kind of have like a bit of like a conversation. It's kind of like an old past life for him, basically. And then her husband shows up, who's played by Jason Clarke, and basically it kind of starts as like this murder kind of love triangle thriller type of thing. But then the movie kind of unravels, and it goes into this whole, spoilers, by the way, though I don't really recommend watching this. But yeah, it unravels into this whole high concept of like this video game that this kid is creating. And there's this kind of connection between the two main leads with Jason Clarke and Matthew McConaughey's character. And it unravels into this really bizarre just plot and everything. We can get into it here, but I did not enjoy this at all. This has to be one of the worst follow-ups I've ever seen from a filmmaker. It's just like, what happened? Like, what happened between Locke and this? It's ambitious to say the least, for sure, but it's just such a mess of a movie, and it's just like everything drags. It's really boring. You're not invested in any of the drama that happens. And then the twists and turns just makes you question what you're watching. And it just feels like such a fever dream of a film that I'm like, is this real? Like, I'm not making this up, am I? So I guess Nabahi, I know you had kind of heard of it and everything once I recommended it last episode. So I'm curious, what was your thought process with this movie, I guess?
Right away, this movie just felt very manufactured. It has like a lifeless quality to it, which is very surprising considering the cast list of,
right,
kind of A-listers. Granted, I'm not the biggest fan of Anne Hathaway, but come on, when she brings it, she brings it. She does a really great job of showing complex emotions, going to the full extent of, committing to a role. And when you're watching this, it's just the dialogue doesn't feel consistent. It really just feels awkward at most points. Even the lighting just feels very flat. It's like this constant like white lighting that you just see typically in every movie. The cinematography I just hated so much. Every shot was just like it just felt flat and it felt lifeless. And I was just like, I feel like this is, I mean, maybe this was like a genius move on his part, but it felt like, it felt synthetic. It felt like AI kind of made a movie, which
is funny because it's from 2019.
Well, exactly. But I guess another funny layer to it with this whole video game thing, maybe that was like a 3D chess move that he was like trying to emulate. I really don't know. But it's just shocking when you're watching this. Again, like one of my favorite things with Locke, and it's something that I don't really enjoy too much in movies because I feel like sometimes it just doesn't work. In Locke, he really knew how to handle subtlety with a lot of the performances. Right.
Especially because most of them were like through phone calls and everything like that. So it was obviously up for you to kind of decide how to feel with the emotions.
And this movie has no subtlety. This movie doesn't play into that side at all. Like, for instance, when Jason Clarke's character comes on, like he's so one note and so straightforward. It's just like, who wrote this? Like there's no
Stephen Knight wrote this.
There's no dimension to his portrayal. It's just so one note. And it's just like from the moment you meet him, you already know exactly how he's going to be through the rest of the movie, And
it's consistent, you could say.
And it's just like, that's it. But that's how it is with a lot of the characters. It's just like from the moment you see them, you already experience the full extent to them, you know? And I don't get it because in Locke, you see kind of this drastic change. You see the tension in their performances. You also see the calm sides of their performances as well. And there's a whole palette of emotions that you see on display. This movie, I feel like, tries to have it at points, but the director just didn't know how to handle it.
And I think it's because
like Wallied mentioned, the scope is so big, it's going for this kind of Black Mirror-esque kind of storyline. Right. And it just doesn't know how to achieve it, And it's so funny because it's like Black Mirror was obviously popular early 2010s all the way, to the mid 2010s. And here we are, this movie's 2019. And I feel like it doesn't even do what Black Mirror does in an hour-long episode. This movie has an hour and 50 minutes and it still can't get across what some of these shows do in a much shorter runtime.
Right. And it's just like everything drags. Everything feels super underdeveloped. Surprisingly enough, I don't even feel like you have that much time with the main character and his whole like little love triangle thing that they're kind of doing. You get like one scene of it when they're like on the ship together. And even then it's just kind of awkward and clunky. And you have this horrible exposition with this kid that they introduce. This whole video game concept and the line I mentioned at the beginning was so ridiculous that I was just like, okay, like what?
So many lines. There's another line. I'm a hooker who can't afford hooks.
He's got bars.
What is that line? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Well, that's also another line. Matthew McConaughey's like, your proficiency doesn't alter regulations. That's a pretty straightforward line. Like that's just like, okay, I understand what he means. Most people are going to understand what that means. Yet the douchebag character is like, Jesus Christ, he talks like a fucking college professor. I'm like, what do you mean? He said your proficiency doesn't alter regulations. That's not a college professor. That's just someone who knows how to be literate. Like, what? And that's it's just like, why did you write this movie in this way? Like the concepts can be interesting. Again, like I like Black Mirror. I like, those concepts, or even M. Night movies. He has those kind of grand concepts that he can tell really well. Right. And he focuses them around a personal story. And in that personal story, you can understand the world. You can feel the tangibilization of it. It comes across as lifelike, In this movie, it doesn't feel lifelike. Everything feels flat. It feels boring.
Robotic.
It feels robotic. It feels...
Which I guess you could maybe, like, I've seen some people who like this, and their argument has been like, oh, well, they're like NPCs in a video game. So in that sense, that makes it okay. But I'm like... Dude, I've seen GTA 5 NPCs that have more emotion and personality than anybody in this movie. Really, like, they're all the same. They all sound exactly the same. They all just sound like the writer,
Well, that's the thing. It's like even video games, in a sense, for the past 20 years now, have been trying to emulate movies, Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
Now that this guy is trying to emulate video games, it's like, where do they take inspiration from?
Yeah, well, it's funny listening to this like interview that he gave where he's like, yeah, I'm trying to experiment with narrative structure and I'm trying to go in different routes and directions that other filmmakers aren't doing. And I'm just like, okay, sure, but like...
Okay, if he's trying to experiment with narrative structure, why can you guess the ending 20 minutes into this movie? Like, they're showing this kid, there's like this 3-minute scene of him like feeling this water on his desk that he spilled when he wakes up from a dream, and Matthew McConaughey wakes up from a dream at the same time, and it cuts back and forth between both of them feeling this water, and I'm like... Right there, you know what it is. Like,
yeah, it's like
and then this twist comes along, and I'm like... Is that even a twist? Like, were they hiding that? Like, this movie's so in your face. And that's my thing is like, in Locke, he knew subtleties. He knew how to
unravel information.
And now it's just like, he just throws everything at you. And it's just like, why? Not even to mention, oh my God, some of the CGI in this movie is atrocious. Like,
what about that fish, bro? It was so cool. That fish was
horrible. Absolutely terrible. And
its name is Justice, apparently.
Oh my God. Or there's this scene where Anne Hathaway's character comes in and she holds, I swear to God, I like laughed out loud. She like throws up. She comes into the bar, her hand goes up, and you see they had like this cheap iMovie effect of like a sparkle on her ring. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? And then the camera goes on like this weird 3D swivel to show her like face. And I'm
yeah, they did it a couple of times because they did it with like Jason Clarke's character, and then they did it with like Matthew McConaughey's character when he was like walking to like God. And I made a joke in my notes. I was like, it made me want to like pick up the controller and just start like moving him around and everything. Yeah. It was so funny,
atrocious,
and it was just like. That's what I feel like makes the video game twist even more predictable. Because I'm like, okay, like who thought this was a good idea? Yeah. Like it makes it more obvious. Like, oh, it's a video game. And then honestly, just the editing throughout is so clunky. I don't know. Like it feels like every 2 seconds, like even like dialogue scenes, it's just cutting like every 2 seconds. It's so choppy throughout and everything. And especially like the scenes that transition between like him and then like this kid, I guess doesn't do anything with his life. He just sits in his room. He doesn't go to school, I guess.
Oh my God. Basic. Yeah. Okay. Like, again, it's so in your face, like not to mention that stupid ring scene where the sparkle is so apparent and it's just like, I know there's a fucking ring. Like, why don't you just show a close-up shot of her hand and you don't have to do this stupid ass sparkle? Because I guarantee when they were editing it, they're like, you can't really see the ring, so we got to put something on it. This kid like is getting abused or whatever. and he's laying on the ground, and the parallel with the ground, he has like this hood over his face.
Oh yeah.
And he so deliberately just moves it, and you see this bruise, and I'm like, who thought of this? Like, that's so in your face. Like, it's just like, where's like, I don't need this thing completely spelled out for me that he's getting abused. Like, obviously you hear yelling and all this stuff in the background. He's laying on the floor. At that point, I can assume that, all right, some bad shit's probably going down, or it just went down, or whatever. But then I feel like the director was like, we got to hammer it in. We got to make sure they know. So let's have him move this hood out of the way, and shows this bruise. And it's so apparent and in your face. It's just like, why? Like, why? Like, this movie is literally, you feel like the director's sitting right next to you, explaining everything that's going on. You feel like you feel like he's there holding your hand, guiding you through his world that is just so lifeless, and it's just so boring, and it's like you don't want to be there.
Okay, this was an issue that I had actually with Locke, that I also found that somehow the issue got worse in this movie. So if you remember in the Locke discussion, I wasn't the biggest fan of a lot of the music choices in that film.
Oh yeah.
I just thought they were kind of all right. I didn't feel like they added a lot.
One thing you mentioned was they were stock music.
Yeah, it's stock music, exactly. And for some reason, it got worse in this movie.
Yeah,
and it sounds like stock music, like cinematic. Like if you looked up like cinematic classical score, you would probably find a score like this in this movie. And that's what baffles me so much.
I have no idea who the composer is. So if he put in work, obviously, okay, I get it.
He probably told him to make it sound like this. It's probably some temp music score.
However, in the intro, it's setting up this boat, and you see this whole underwater scene. Feels like it's going in one area, and then it kind of rises up, and this music kind of starts amping up. And I'm like, right away, I was just like, who is this movie for? Like, on the poster, you have Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. It probably looks like it's called Serenity. And it looks like kind of some romance movie. And in a way, it kind of is. But like then the music comes in. Yeah. And I'm like, what's this
all
tone?
Grand. It is like some epic type of movie. And it's like, what? Mm-hmm. It doesn't even fit the tone of what you're watching, and it's just like, it's just so weird. And then like a lot of the music choices, like they end so abruptly. They're like so short to where you're like, why was that there? Like, why is this in the movie? And then you have this kind of like culture music or whatever that they keep spamming throughout like the first 20, 30 minutes. And it's just like, oh my God, make it stop. I don't want to hear this goddamn song anymore. And it's like, stop with this horrible score. It's just like, I didn't know the music choices could get worse, and they don't add it to anything that you're watching. They're just there. And it feels just kind of manipulative. And it feels like it was just put in there like last minute. Oh, well, we got to add a score in there or something. And it's just
another one of my kind of nitpicks with the movie. It's not a big thing, but besides the intro, shows them on the boat, shows that awful fish. Then past that, it's like another 40 minutes before they're back on the ocean again.
Right.
However, in between that, all they keep talking about is the fucking ocean. And all they fucking show is this stupid ass dock. And I'm like, for a movie that keeps talking about the ocean and
what about when he jumps
catching this fish, all we see is the same fucking shot of a boat either leaving or coming back to the dock. And I'm like, show the ocean. And I feel like the director was probably terrified to be out at sea and didn't want to risk anything going wrong. So he tried to minimalize it. Or maybe the budget wasn't there. I don't know. But I'm like...
It seems pretty high budget, though, because they got Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway. So I'm like, there had to be at least like a big budget with this. And it's funny you mentioned the ocean because there's this random sequence at the beginning where he's like jumping into like the ocean or whatever. And he just sees like this magic bubbles of like the kid or whatever it was. It was really bizarre. I don't know if you remember.
There's like this awful scene where Matthew McConaughey's like naked in the water, and I'm like,
you got to see his booty.
I was like, I don't want to see this. Like this to quote Flickinger, this sets up the tone of the movie, which is ass. You know, like that's all this movie is. This movie was ass, and they set it up in that scene, and it's just weird. It's just like, why? Matthew McConaughey's performance just feels like kind of a recycled character he did in Mud. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I haven't seen it. So,
it's really good, but this just feels like kind of in that same vein, and it felt like almost a retread, kind of similar to how we had Jeff Bridges in True Grit, and then a couple years later he recycles it in the R.I.P.D. movie.
Oh yeah,
and it's literally the same thing. And I was like, this is exactly how I felt watching this movie. It just felt like a recycled kind of half-assed kind of attempt. Probably because I feel like the director didn't give him much, and I feel like he just kind of went with what he knew he could do.
There's only so much you could really work with though with the movie like this. It's just like okay.
I do not recommend anyone to really watch this movie. It is interesting in the point of having kind of a not a masterclass, but having a really good kind of movie and a really good kind of stamp in your own style, your own execution. And then to follow that up with something that is so drastically different, but still, I feel like he could have kept it in his wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah, you could definitely do like a bottle type of thing. You could have it set in this like, on this boat, the Serenity boat. Yeah. That's where the title, I guess, comes from. Have that be the main focus of the film. Get rid of this kid, get rid of this whole video game aspect because none of it works. And that's actually one thing I wanted to touch on is like this whole video game aspect. It doesn't work. It's just everything falls apart with this movie because of that aspect. Literally, because it just feels like almost like an excuse to, because like, again, you have Digimon Hansu's character there, and then he's forgotten about. And then you have this whole character that Matthew McConaughey is having sex with, and then she's forgotten about, and it just feels like the movie is just using it as like an excuse to be like, oh, well, he's going on these side quest things. He's like finding himself as like an NPC. And it's just like, no, that doesn't work. It feels very forced, and it feels just very last minute, like it was just shoved in there because you didn't know what else to do. And while you were editing it, you were just like, well, we can't really do anything with these characters and everything like that, so yeah, I don't know, how do you feel with the whole video game aspect of this?
Again, it just, you've seen other things do this type of stuff better, like a Black Mirror or maybe an M. Night, in their execution of that. I would have rather had this whole video game thing kind of be more tailor fit. If you're going to do this, I would rather them kind of less in your face hints and more kind of subtleties. Then at the end, do the big kind of reveal of here it is. I hate it every time they cut it back to this kid. And it had this stupid camera angle of like this code screen over his face. And I'm just like, why do they keep cutting back to this?
It's like the Matrix, bro.
And it's like the moment you see the screen, you see the boat. And I was just like, you already know what it is. You know what's going to happen.
I was hoping to God it wasn't going to be that. Yeah. And then when it revealed it, I was like, oh my God, I hate this even more.
But that's my thing is like, if you're going to do this whole video game thing, okay, you could probably place it at the end and maybe make it work. However, I feel like the directing in this movie needed a whole redo in general, or you expose that information very early on at the beginning and just clearly state it. Don't try to sneak reveal this thing. Just state it in the beginning and then build up to something like a climax that is maybe more emotionally driven, know? So that way we know the rules of the world. We know how it works. And now we can follow along with that. And now think of something emotional, like towards the end when the game's getting reworked or whatever, and you see the world disappearing in this awful effect. Holy crap.
It moves to like a warehouse or whatever.
I swear to God. I just quick side note, this camera angle is like going around Matthew McConaughey. And I don't know if they didn't get the shutter or the film rate right. I don't know what it was, but it just starts to, the frame rate just slows down and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
And it's not attributed to a video game. This is just bad filmmaking. I swear. I know some jackass is going to try to say it's like in a video game when the frame rate slows down. No, it's not, because in the next scene they have a close-up of Matthew McConaughey's face and all this particle effect in the background, and now the shutter rate is fixed. The frame rate's fine. It's smooth now. I don't buy that for 1 second. But anyways, you have that scene at the end where it is kind of emotional, but also tied into that video game aspect of the world being reworked. You know, things are just kind of getting torn apart. Okay, like that's good on paper, maybe, but execution, the build up to it didn't really feel like you earned much, you know?
No.
It just felt like
because everything is spoon fed to you at that point. And then it's like you have this awful exposition where like this guy in a suit that keeps showing up every 10 minutes, the Succession guy or whatever he is, he's just like, I am the rules. And then he explains to him this whole thing of like how he's like an NPC in a video game. And then he looks at the map or whatever it was, and he sees like there's no land. I'm like, did he ever look at this map? It's just like, what? It's so goofy. And then just like on top of it, you have these scenes where like Anne Hathaway and Jason Clarke's character, where she's like trying to like seduce him or whatever. And it was just really awkward and uncomfortable. And it didn't feel like intense at all. I didn't feel that way at least. And that's one thing in common this movie has, is just the sex scenes are so unnecessary. They feel very uncomfortable. Like I don't think I should be watching this. Like, it's just feels, again, just really forced. And it was just like, oh, we got to have like a romantic side of the film, but you know, it's got to be steamy and adult and everything. And it just feels very forced again. And I don't know, it felt really weird to me because I was like, since they're in a video game, right? Is this kid programming it to like have his parents have sex? God. Because if that's the case, that's really creepy and weird, and I don't want to watch this movie. I don't. Why is that there?
The team behind this didn't know how to execute this at all. And I feel like by the time it was done, they didn't know how do you market this movie? It's rated R. It's about video games. It's about this kind of
neo-noir romance type of thing, I think.
And it's also about like fishing.
They got to catch the tuna. And
it's just like right there, all that just sounds so convoluted and confusing. And it's just like they needed it. I don't get it. Like, why didn't you have some studio exec read this and be like, you know what, let's kind of dial it in a bit, let's just focus on one thing, like
let's fix this part,
this is all too much. And again, none of it really feels like it adds up. And even when things do kind of attach itself to one another, it's just like kind of an oh duh, like come on, like we're not that stupid, you know, it's so in your face. I don't know.
I don't even think this movie knows what it wants to be, though. You know, it's just like it's trying to be like 5 or 6 different things at once. But I don't think Steven Knight or the team could really figure out what they wanted. So they're just like, okay, let's just throw everything at the wall and let's see what sticks and what doesn't stick. You know, it feels like that's kind of how it came together watching it. It was just like a series of things that happened, and we're just like, okay, he'll fish at this point, and then we'll do a weird romance thing at this point, and then we'll do a high concept thing at this point. That's kind of how it feels watching it. It's just like it's 3 movies, and none of them are attached or stitched together all that well. And then it's just the whole explanation of the son being like the video game developer or whatever is just so ridiculous. I didn't even really like the son character at all. I don't even feel like you have that much time with him. You know, really the only things you get with him is he just sits there on his computer programming the video game. And then his dad comes in and he tells him his stepdad comes in and tells him some weird, stupid threat. And then, but something that I think could have been a lot cooler, and I think you could have maybe expanded upon this more rather than showing the whole fishing thing, if you wanted to go for that angle, is maybe showing him like, what is his school life like? What's his life like at home? Yeah. What's his relationship like with his stepfather, with his mother? You know, you don't even get that much time with it. And it just feels like you're just supposed to, you know, I don't know if it was maybe he was trying to do some like mystery, like abstract, like keep it intriguing kind of angle. But again, it just doesn't work. It falls flat on its face a lot of the time.
This to kind of encapsulate this movie in my head. It feels like when you hear directors or writers in like an interview, talking about maybe like a big IP or, something, and they're there at the premiere because they contributed to the writing.
Oh, right.
And then they mentioned in the interview, I was a part of the first draft, and my version was very different from the one we see now. And that's what the movie feels like. It feels like when the director mentions their first draft. That's how I would describe this movie. There's like literally when you're watching this feels like the very basis of an idea, and it feels like it could have benefited from getting another writer to come in and do another draft, do another rewrite, and then after that get another writer to come in and do another rewrite, and then when the director comes in and obviously a different director, when that guy comes in and sees the stuff that isn't working, he can cut it. Or then he can get his own writer to come in and stitch things better together. This movie I feel like it could maybe work in maybe like the basis of the idea. However, I feel like I've seen this kind of execution done a lot better. Obviously in like a Black Mirror episode, In Black Mirror, they deal with the evils of technology, and they've done video games before, and it does work really well. However, with this movie, it's just not the case. It just feel like Steven just went about a first draft, and he just was like, all right, we're ready to film,
I mean, that's what it feels like watching it.
It's just atrocious.
It's like he wrote it in like 30 minutes and was just like, all right, here you go.
Yeah. And it's just not enjoyable. Like, I'll never come back to this movie. I'll never recommend anyone I know to watch this movie.
God, no.
Yeah, it truly just feels like you're just watching an AI movie, honestly. That's how it feels.
It's ahead of its time.
If this is how cinema is going to go in the next 30 years, we're screwed. Because if I paid money for this and I was in a theater, man, this might be something I'd walk out of. I guess score-wise, honestly, I'm probably at like a 3 out of 10.
Really?
Maybe like a 2. Again, the actors in it do a decent job. Honestly, they probably make this thing more watchable than it actually is.
Sure.
If this movie didn't have these performances and actors in it, I probably would have made it like 20 minutes in and just turned it off. Again, maybe on paper, some of these ideas might actually work. Like I mentioned with the climax of the whole redoing the game, tearing everything down. That's interesting. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
If I was reading that, I'd be like, that
you could do something with that.
Yeah. Some of the ideas are on paper at least interesting. So I guess that's why I'm at probably like a 3.
Okay.
What about you?
Yeah. Closing thoughts, I guess, for this film. This is probably one of the worst movies. I'm so sorry. This is like one of the worst movies I've seen. Very clunky in every way. The dialogue is awful. The acting is pretty bad for the most part, aside from Matthew McConaughey's performance, which is the only performance I thought was okay. And then, I don't know, I thought some of the colors popped out. I thought that kind of looked nice rather than it being kind of gray and everything, because that's kind of what I was expecting the movie to probably do, is have that like gray, lifeless Zack Snyder type of coloring. So that was kind of nice, I guess. Yeah, just horrible story all around. It doesn't really know what it wants to be. And again, it's just like concepts not done well at all. And it just feels like 3 movies stitched together. Yeah, just horrible pacing all around, clunky editing all around. I'm honestly like between like a 1 and a 2, but I think it's like a low 2 out of 10 from me. Yeah, I've really thought about giving this a 1, honestly. Yeah, I think I would say it's like a low 2 out of 10, just for Matthew McConaughey's performance and just some of the colors popping out. Like, it did look kind of nice. But yeah, this was atrocious. And I don't know. I just hope Stephen Knight can maybe like look back on this and maybe just like hopefully improve in some way, shape, or form, because it's just unfortunate, it's just such a massive step down between Locke and this film. And it's just like, yeah, this needed a lot more time in the oven and everything for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Massive, massive disappointment.
All right. So yeah, it's on Prime.
It's actually free on a lot of places, surprisingly. So yeah, I guess if you
guys.
really want to watch it that
free.
bad,
Don't pay for it.
You don't need to pay for it. So that's nice.
Let us know.
I guess let us know what you think.
This is, if I guarantee there's some subgroup out there who has like a fucking following for this movie, but so yeah, let us know what you guys think.
So sorry. God, what an awful movie. I think
next time I'm going back and forth between a couple movies, just to kind of string away from the, grade A films that we've been selecting. Obviously, we love our favorite movies. We love the 10s out of 10s. And rather than just go down my line of 10s out of 10s, I feel like maybe let me select something that is not necessarily what I consider a 10 out of 10, but it's just a movie that I kind of enjoy watching. I've mentioned this movie to Wallied before. It's part of a franchise, and I kind of have it's how I kind of describe a guilty pleasure movie. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's great. It's actually pretty bad.
Okay.
Yet, when you watch it, you still have fun, you still enjoy it. And in your eyes, you're just like, all right, I like that movie. I don't know what it is with this movie. I'm kind of excited to talk about it just because it'll be an interesting discussion, I hope, is John Woo's Mission Impossible 2. It came out very early 2000s. It's not good. I just want to preference that if you guys are considering watching it. Like, there's a reason film culture has adapted and it has evolved because movies like this, if we were still making movies in this way, we would be in very deep trouble, I'm very glad movies have evolved past this point. However, when you're watching it, it kind of does a lot of things in a horrible way that's just kind of fascinating to watch. Okay. Especially a part of a franchise, and especially a part of a franchise that continues to grow and evolve and get better past each release. They find a way to keep making it work. They find a way to keep making it fresh. And I think the success of this franchise nowadays is attributed to this movie's reception.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys will check it out before the next episode. We'll be getting into it.
Yeah. I've seen it once. I saw it as a kid a long time ago. So this will be a nice little refresher.
Nice.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. I'm not the biggest John Woo fan.
Neither am I.
Yeah. I've only seen one other movie of his, Face Off. I don't like that movie at all.
Nice.
So, yeah. I'm interested. Yeah, let's do it, man.
We're just going to talk about the second one. So if you haven't seen the first one, probably check it out. But I guess the cool thing with these movies is you don't really kind of watch each one for its own.
They're all kind of their own movies in their own way.
You could just kind of like run with it,
They're all their own little adventures, which I love.
However,
like that about.
There is a nice evolution throughout these movies. But yeah, this is one of my guilty pleasure movies.
Cool.
Very ashamed to admit that, but yeah.
Nah, don't be.
Here we are.
All right.
Let us know what you guys think. That's it for us. We'll see you on the next one.
Good day. Good night, mates.